Hey everybody, this is Doomhammer with another quarterback update. This time this is for the 12-year review of the Arizona Cardinals quarterbacks. Yes, there are a lot of quarterbacks up there on the screen. Not all of them were like major starters for them. But let's go ahead and get started breaking down these quarterbacks. First up is Jake Plummer in 2002-2003 season. And it was a pretty rough season for the Cardinals. He went 2-7 as their starting quarterback. Not what you wanted to see from him. Plummer was with the Cardinals for quite a while in his real career, real life. But, I mean, he had some good moments like that. But if you look at the score, right, 28-7, 38-21, they frequently got their clocks cleaned in most games. So the Arizona Cardinals definitely needed some change. We got Plummer there making mistakes like that. I think there's a tough interception there. But then we'll take a look at the first team he went to right after the Cardinals was the Pittsburgh Steelers. He went 6-10, only played one season with them. That's when they drafted Ben Roethlisberger that following off season. Through the 2003-2004 season, in 2004 they drafted Big Ben. Then Plummer went to the Cowboys, went 2-4 with them, and then the Eagles as a backup. You see the 2005 did not play a snap. Then you look at his Cardinals career versus his lifetime career in my franchise: 16,500 yards, 85 TDs, 104 interceptions. Most of his stats, as you can see, are with the Arizona Cardinals. And then you see his real-life stats compared to his Madden stats, and he definitely outperformed me in real life. Now, in real life, he went 5-11 with the Cardinals this year, and then he went to the Denver Broncos. But he had a 9-2, 10-6, 13-3, 7-4 season, and then he played one season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a backup. I didn't play a snap. But definitely a much different career in my franchise than in Madden. So that was the first quarterback for the Cardinals franchise, and it ended pretty pathetically. And then you have Josh McCown, who also played a few snaps that season. He had also a one-year term with the Arizona Cardinals, where in real life he had several more seasons with them. McCown goes 2-5 as the Cardinals quarterback. He played fairly well. I thought about maybe developing and working with him further, but we know that the Arizona Cardinals decided to go in a different direction. So as you can see, 2-5. Then he went to the Oakland Raiders. Went 4-5 his first year, and then was the backup. Marquise Tuiasosopo ended up getting some starting opportunities. So it was kind of a bouncing around there. Because sort of just a standard backup. Then he went to Cleveland, and he actually had a 2-year stint as their starter. Went 7-10, 6-11, so 13-21 is his record. And then McCown has been a backup ever since. I don't even know if he technically retired. I don't know if he's even still in the league. But Washington in 2010, I see my lines are a little bit off there, but that's okay. Then he went to Denver in 2011, and then the Detroit Lions in 2012. About 619 yards with Washington, 109 for the Broncos, and then 38 yards for the Detroit Lions. When we look at his stats, he had about 1,900 yards, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions as a Cardinal. Whereas his entire career, he had 10,500 yards, much more touchdowns, much more interceptions. A lot of those came from the Cleveland Browns, because when he was a Cleveland Browns quarterback, he got most of his yards and stats. Then you compare that with his real life, and I think a lot of that is because McCown had a lot more playing time in real life, because he did play for the Browns, played 8 games, played with the Jets for what would be, I think, 16 games around 2 seasons. Cardinals, played with the Bears a little bit. And so, yeah, he kind of, I don't really see him bouncing back at all, even as a backup or anything. So he's pretty much had I don't know if he's officially out of the career, of the league, but he's not really making many strides. So this is probably more of a wrap-up in his career. And then they bring in Jeff Garcia from the San Francisco 49ers. So they poach one of their division rivals. And there we see Andre Johnson, who was a top pick in the 2003 draft, gets his first career touchdown reception by Jeff Garcia. So Garcia had 2 seasons with the Arizona Cardinals, went 9-7, then 7-9. So kind of had a 500-year performance with them. You can see he had some good highlights. Was a pretty solid quarterback for them. I think in the previous video, I had the San Francisco 49ers recapping Jeff Garcia's career. But yeah, you can see some highlights there with Boston and Andre Johnson. Was with Washington, Dallas, and then Cleveland. Had a pretty solid year with them before calling it quits. When we look at his career stats, about 8,000 of those yards were from Arizona. He threw 80 touchdown passes in those 2 seasons. Had 24 interceptions, which isn't terrible. It was 10 one year, 14 the other. 2 rushing touchdowns. And then when we compare him with his real-life career, you can see that the Madden franchise he outperformed his real-life career with the exception of rushing. So he apparently rushed a lot better in real life than he did in my franchise. So I threw more with him than I ran. And then in 2005, they bring in Michael Vick because it wasn't working out with the Falcons because he just wasn't winning games. But he got injured very early, and so we'll talk about Vick later. But they brought in Trent Green for the 2005 season, and I thought that was just a fantastic play there to Andre Johnson. Here we see a beautiful lob there, beautiful catch. So Trent Green comes in, he goes 4-3 as the Cardinals starting quarterback after Michael Vick goes down. And we see right there, I don't know if it's a highlight reel for Trent Green or if it's a highlight reel for Andre Johnson, but just making a spectacular catch for the Cardinals. And then there's, of course, some more highlights here. So we got Trent Green, who really struggled in my franchise than he did in real life. I mean, I think he threw like 8,400 less yards in my franchise than in real life. And that was because the Chiefs didn't go very well. He got injured in 2004, and that he only had like a 1-3 record with the Chiefs, and that's when they decided to move on from him. So you can see he was with the Chargers, the Washington, the Rams, but then I started my franchise when he was in his second season with Kansas City. He only went 18-34 in my franchise as a Chiefs quarterback, so of course they'd move on from that. Then he was 4-3 with the Cardinals. Then in 2006, he was a free agent, didn't sign anywhere. And then 2007, they brought him in as a backup for the Indianapolis Colts. And then you've got, again, a very short stint there, 1,600 yards, 15 of 19, so he had more interceptions thrown than touchdowns, which is not good, with a career of 20,000 passing yards. His career ends up being 8,000 less, 8,400 less, as I mentioned. He threw less touchdowns. Of course, I threw less interceptions. I guess I ran less than him. I ran for less touchdowns. So Trent Green, this was not really a good career for him in my franchise. Not the successful person we kind of remembered him being as a sort of stable quarterback for the Chiefs for the early 2000s. He sort of kind of tapped out much earlier than expected. But back to Michael Vick. So Michael Vick had a really tough time in Atlanta. He was like 1-1, 6-10, 4-12, 4-6, and so he went to the Cardinals because he ended up leaving because the quarterback or the coach there in Atlanta felt, you know what, we need to move on and get a real passer and not just a running back. But the Arizona Cardinals decided we'll take the running back that can throw occasionally. Of course, Michael Vick had 440 yards rushing his first season, 955 the second season. So did fairly well with them, but did not come away with many wins. He, as you can see, he was 15 of 29 for the Falcons. He was 9 of 19 for the Cardinals. Then, of course, he went to prison for 2 years and then went to Washington, where he was with the Redskins for 2 years. Then they changed their name around 2011 to the Commanders, where he was there for 5 years. 36-38 record, not bad, but of course wasn't to the point where you had hoped he would be. Now, I think I need to do something different with Madden because I hate their regression kind of tool. But there's other tools you can use for progression and regression, but like they keep your speed the same, which is really odd because Normally what ends the careers of mobile quarterbacks is when they get old and they're getting beat up. They don't normally have the same speed and agility they did when they were in their 20s. So I might have to figure that out where he still has his speed, and right now he's the Saints quarterback. If you're watching the weekly updates, he did take the starting job away from Geno Smith, but we'll see if that's able to maintain. However, sticking back with the Cardinals, we can see his career stats with the Arizona team is 4,500 yards, 45 passing touchdowns, 31 interceptions. We see a little bit over that, almost 1,400 yards rushing and 14 touchdowns. Then, of course, compared to his career, we did better. So Michael Vick is doing better than his real-life career. He's in more games. He is more yards, more touchdowns, more rushing yards, a nice rushing yard touchdown stat. But again, Vic was an exciting quarterback to play with. He still is. However, again, I think right now he's still a little bit too dominant as a runner in his 30s. But then the Arizona Cardinals went with Brett Favre. So as Michael Vick went to prison, they had all these weapons. So you've got, again, as you can see, that insane catch there by Andre Johnson. They had Calvin Johnson Jr. They were such a loaded team offensively, even Anthony Gonzalez. So they got a quarterback that I felt was able to get them into the Super Bowl or have some great success. Brett Favre left Green Bay because they believed in Jay Cutler, kind of like an Aaron Rodgers thing, which, it didn't turn out, as you'll see with Green Bay's quarterback history. But Brett Favre doing all the things he had to do to get an astounding 7-10 season. So you can see his career basically. You got he was drafted by Atlanta, didn't do much there. That's all before my time playing. Green Bay is 151 to 124 record. He played in Green Bay 1 year less in my franchise than in real life. But he did play into the 2011 season, which in real life he retired after the 2010 season. So he was with Green Bay 1 year less. This was sort of his Arizona debut was more of the New York Jets. So just like the Jets had Favre for 1 year, went 9-7. The Cardinals had him for 1 year, went 7-10. And he decided to go somewhere else. He didn't want to stay. And so it was astounding to me. He went to the Vikings, as I did have other teams go for him, but he chose to go to the Vikings. Now, when we look at his stats, again, just one season, 4,200 yards, 39 touchdowns, 21 interceptions, and he's not known for his legs, so not worried too much about that. And then you see his career stats, where Favre at the time, I think, was the leading passer of all time with 71,000 yards. So we'll switch over to the career stats, where he had 71,000 yards, 38, 508 passing touchdowns. And I finished his career with 6 fewer interceptions. So a little pat on the back for myself for being a little bit more protective of the ball than Brett Favre was in his career. And I played 1 more year than he played in real life. So you're welcome, Brett Favre fans and whoever is an admirer of his. But we have 78,000 yards passing. He is the league leader in pass yards in my franchise so far. And I can even, probably on a later video, maybe like the Vikings or the Packers, I might show where he ranks all time. But Brett Favre, a 1 year rental, and unfortunately was not able to take them to the playoffs. And then we had Kurt Warner, unfortunately only playing 1 season with the Cardinals, and he played in the year that there were 3 starting quarterbacks. He was supposed to be the guy, and we'll get to the other 2 in a little bit. But he had most of his career with the St. Louis Rams, as you can see, 83, 41-1. And then he went to Oakland for 1 year, and that burned out very quickly. The Raiders video was probably going to be much longer because they had a lot of quarterbacks coming in and out of that franchise. And then he was 0-3. I don't remember if he got injured or replaced, and there's like Chad Henne played a little bit and Phillip Rivers. When we look at his career here in Arizona, not anything close to the career he had in St. Louis. Now, he did go to an NFC Championship game, which is an accomplishment, but he did that with the Rams, of course. They lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers in my franchise, where I guess in Kurt Warner's real life, he went to the NFC, he went to the Super Bowl with the Cardinals. Well, he went to a Super Bowl with the St. Louis Rams in my franchise. And when we look at his career versus his real life, we did do a little bit better than his real life, even though I almost feel like his career ended shorter than it had to, because he was done around the 2008 season. He was pretty much washed up, whereas in real life he went all the way to 2009 and then retired after that Super Bowl appearance. But that's a short story for Kurt Warner. More on him when we talk about the Rams. And next up we have Chad Henne. And as you'd expect, Chad Henne had a shorter career. He's still going. He's a backup right now, but he has a shorter career than one would expect. I mean, he didn't get many starts in this franchise before, of course, having it was Phillip Rivers that took over the Cardinals, where basically he was from 2008 to 2011. He went 1-2, and it was in that 2008 season. The rest of those years, from 09, 10, and 11, he threw a combined 34 yards in those 3 years. And now he is the backup in Jacksonville, where he had a chance to start between him, Colt McCoy, and Nick Foles. Colt McCoy since then has won that battle and has been actually winning. He's got Jacksonville competing for the top place in the AFC South this season. When we look at his career stats, again, the only stats he has is with Arizona. He has yet to throw for over 1,000 yards in his career. 11 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 32 yards. Maybe he'll get a chance to start somewhere else. When we look at his entire career, he's actually doing he was with the Dolphins first for 4 years. Then he went to Jacksonville, so kind of a similar second team move for him. Then he was with the Kansas City Chiefs for quite a while. But looking at his career stats, again, there's still a lot to make up. His career is not over, but it's not looking too great. And then we have Phillip Rivers, who was acquired in the 2008 offseason to sort of be a competitor for this starting job with Kurt Warner. Now, Rivers was the most successful Cardinals quarterback up for some time. I mean, when we look at his past history, he had 4 seasons with the team, and he started most of those years. Yes, throwing to Calvin Johnson Jr. and Andre Johnson is always helpful. They did end up trading Andre Johnson to the Patriots. But Rivers has not had the career he did in real life, where he was drafted by the Titans, and since then has not had much success. And there's a really weird interception. Hope you enjoyed that weird clip. But when we look at his career, we see the Titans. He was 25-28. Really, he could have stayed there for longer, but I try not to always be perfect running a team, if that makes sense, because the way I would run a team and play Madden is different than the way other teams function. Other teams make dumb trades and they release people, or people don't get along. And so in the 2007 season, the Titans traded Phillip Rivers to the Minnesota Vikings. This was to be a successor to Dante Culpepper, because they didn't see that with Tony Romo. And so he threw for 143 yards with the Vikings, and that was it. But then with the Cardinals, he had a little bit more success. So let's take a look at his stats here. He had 10,000 yards. This is the most he had with No, it's not the most he's had with a franchise. It's actually the Titans. He did throw more. But he had a pretty solid career there for 4 seasons. Unfortunately, didn't really come away with anything substantial to keep him there. And then we look at his career, or his real life stats to his career stats, majorly underperforming. I mean, yes, right now he's a backup. He was a backup for 2 years with the Jets. Now, as you saw, he's with the Rams as a backup behind Andrew Luck. So he is now he is a backup. I don't know if he's a career backup, because he technically could start somewhere, but he is in his early 30s. We could see a team like the 49ers with Drew Brees getting older. You could see the Eagles, even though they drafted Teddy Bridgewater this year. But some of these teams with an aging quarterback could possibly use Rivers as a starter somewhere else. But right now, he's mostly been a backup. And then what ended Phillip Rivers' career in Arizona was the emergence of Andy Dalton. Now, Andy Dalton has been a pretty solid quarterback his entire career. As a Cleveland fan, I know playing against him. I never thought he was an elite top-tier quarterback. But with the Arizona Cardinals in this franchise, he's now in his 4th year. He was drafted by them 2011. and had some solid years. I mean, he was 7-4 his first year, 8-9 second year, but last year is where he hit his stride, and that was where he won the Super Bowl. The 2014 Super Bowl. Here's a highlight of it. I mean, right there, Mike Wallace transformed the Cardinals last season. You could argue that maybe it's more Mike Wallace's success than Andy Dalton's, but he was Super Bowl MVP, and he gets the credit. And he ended up bringing a Super Bowl trophy to Arizona. So Arizona fans, Andy Dalton is your guy, and he is likely going to be the Cardinals quarterback for many years. He is 27-18 as a quarterback with the Cardinals. When we look at his career and his Cardinals stats, again, they're all the same because he's only ever played for the Arizona Cardinals, and I don't think he's going to be going anywhere anytime soon. He is in a very difficult division. However, the 49ers are getting worse. I think Breeze is going to be out in a bit. If he stays, he's going to be a weaker version of himself. But then he's got to deal with Matthew Stafford and Andrew Luck. Both of those teams have only one loss this season, so we'll see if that continues. And then when we compare Andy Dalton's career stats to his real-life stats, you can see, again, he's... I'm only played 3 seasons with him. So 3 seasons and 9,999 yards. Yes, he's over 10,000 yards now when you include the 2014-2015 season. But Andy Dalton plays a lot more seasons, and so there's going to be a lot more chances to add stats here for Andy Dalton. But in the meantime, he's your guy. He is what is making Arizona the Super Bowl champion they are today, and they've never won a Super Bowl in real life. And the Cardinals made one Super Bowl in my franchise, and they won it. And then I did this for the last video, and I'm going to keep doing it. So if you look at the screen, these are all the quarterbacks who are on the roster for the Cardinals. So we can see Plummer, and he had McCown as the backup, then Garcia and Kingsbury. Jeff Garcia, John Navarre. We had 4 quarterbacks on the roster in 2005. That's because Michael Vick was injured for the majority of the season. Trent Green came back in, so we had John Navarre and Brock Berlin. Then it was Michael Vick and Brad Smith, Brett Favre and Seneca Wallace. We see Phillip Rivers, Kurt Warner, Chad Henne, all of them got a start. Then went the next 2 years of Rivers, we had Chad Henne and Chase Daniel as the backup. And then for Andy Dalton, we see it was like that quarterback battle between Dalton and Rivers. And then we had Henne as the third stringer. And then you had Andy Dalton, Matt Leinart for a year. Leinart played for the Cardinals in real life. He was their first round pick in 2006. And then Tyler Wilson got involved, and now we have Derek Anderson doing this, the backup role here for the defending champions. And then I've started to do a little test of myself to see how many starting quarterbacks have I had and how many starting quarterbacks has the franchise had, and compare. Because I know some comments before were like, oh, well, that's a lot of starting quarterbacks. So I'm going, well, let's see. Is it a lot of starting quarterbacks in 13 seasons? So apparently I did 5 less starting quarterbacks than the real Arizona Cardinals. And it looks like the real life Cardinals, they had a longer longevity with Kurt Warner, as you can see in the 2005 to 2009 era of Kurt Warner. And then for me, it's mostly been, it was finishing Jake Plummer, which again, he only had 1 season anyways with the Cardinals. Then we went into the Jeff Garcia 2 years, but he was an older quarterback, so he decided to move on from us. Then we moved into the which one was it? The Michael Vick era. Brett Favre came in as a 1-year rental. Then we had Phillip Rivers for about 4 years before Andy Dalton came in, and then Andy Dalton has been carrying the load ever since. So I am down 5, so I've been more efficient not having starters, as many starters as the real Cardinals. So if you like this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Hope you enjoy learning more about this alternate reality, about who was where, what they accomplished, what they did. It took a long time to develop this. I mean, actually, this has been like a 5-year project, basically, that I'm just going to keep chugging away, going one game at a time, and yeah, reinvent this league. So I will have more videos coming out. The Rams should be next. I got to work on just, getting all these clips organized. But thank you for watching. I appreciate it. It's a joy to share this with other people. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you in the next video.